Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, this is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is the Question Guy podcast. And I've got Mitch Gray on the horn, and we're going to talk what happens after the recruiting has taken place. And so you found a couple of people, they look good to you, but you really need to figure out if they're going to fit your culture. So we're going to talk about that conversation. Now, a lot of people think of it as the job interview. And so as a precursor to my new workshop program, which is going to focus on the interview conversation. I want to have that conversation with you right now, Mitch. And so I know you take hiring, HR, recruiting, that whole scenario, that whole platform a bit differently than most people. And so I do appreciate that. This is not a direct correlation of what's in your book. This is me talking to you, Mitch. And so let's talk the job interview. So when you first, engage with somebody in that job interview process, or let me even go back, pull the string back a bit. Do you even call it a job interview? Because you were so atypical in your approach to building a team and building a culture. What really does, how does that conversation start?
Mm, yeah, that's probably a question I've never thought of. To be not from the standpoint I don't have an answer. I've never framed it that way. That's actually really interesting. Um,
Okay, that's a good
the
start then.
answer to do I consider it a job interview? Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
Do I actually take part in job interviews? The answer is yes. What really changes is how we get to that place in time. So let's go the traditional route.
Okay.
Um, this is the
You
year
mean like filling in an
2020.
application and such?
Yeah, let's just go the traditional route for a second.
Okay.
So it's the year 2022. We're moving into 2023. What does it normally look like? Normally, what it looks like is people are posting on job boards and or third-party websites, Indeed, Monster, et cetera, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever.
Hmm.
They throw their stuff out there. They find people through those programs and websites that come in. They sift through the applications, either automated or they have someone in their usual HR department. If it's a small business, usually the owner manager. They sift through those applications. Then they make the decision who they're going to call in for an interview. Most people do a phone interview first. That kind of got magnified by the pandemic because they couldn't meet one on one.
Like a screening
Um,
interview?
yeah,
Okay.
screening. Yeah, because a screening interview. So they'll do a phone interview, or maybe I've seen a lot of companies do an extra questionnaire. So maybe through the website or whatever, they go through those kind of algorithm screenings. They decide what 10 people they're going to send it out to. It'll either be a phone screening or another questionnaire.
Mhm.
Then they set up the interview. Okay. That's kind of in generality the usual scenario. I know recently many people have gone through that, and that's kind of what the traditional kind of approach.
Okay. And
So
that makes
now they're at the
sense. Yeah, that
yeah
makes
now they're at
sense.
the interview process. Right now they're going to set up an interview for 10 o'clock Tuesday morning, whatever.
Right.
So where I differentiate is, and people can look back on the videos you and I've done, the podcast episodes, and in my book.
Hmm.
Where I differentiate is how we arrive at that point. So we're both going to arrive at the situation where we're setting up an interview appointment, because that's very important industry wide. Where the differentiation comes into play is how we arrive. And so we just called out the kind of the traditional, what I'm going to call the traditional approach.
Hmm.
And obviously what we've taken and shown over the last few months on your show specifically is how people can actually uh, use the websites and third party apps as just a simple tool in the toolbox, while adding into, I'm going to go out and actively find people. Go out could mean, if you're a local business and you're looking for physical people to show up, physical bodies, you go out and actively recruit. We've
Hmm.
we've 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 talked about that till we're blue in the face, and we
Right.
still will.
Right.
For remote workers, you will go out, meaning I'm going to go on social media and other platforms and recruit people actively through that scenario. So my last solution is third party apps and agencies, because I know my culture best. I know my team best. I hopefully know who I need at the table best of all. An algorithm doesn't know. So that's just a tool in the toolbox.
Right.
So really what you're asking is what happens from the time that we've taken a different path to building our team from the traditional, but we both want to arrive at an interview time and place. And so that's where I do view the interview process a little bit differently. And you alluded to it. For me, if I'm running a small business and a local community and I'm forward facing, meaning I give direct customer service, restaurant, retail, insurance agencies, shipping companies, whatever that looks like, but I need people to actually give customer service. I want to hand select a 9 out of 10 of those people. What that means is
I
in
mean, you
one form or
personally, you, yeah.
100%, 100%.
Okay.
What that means is now that's done through some form or fashion. What do I mean by that? Some form or fashion could mean I go out and physically recruit people. We've
Right.
talked about that. I'm
Right.
at the coffee shop. Barista does a good job. By the way, for those watching, I have a cup of coffee here. I just went and picked this up before our show. It was not at my usual go-to. It was at a different go-to. But as I'm totally chasing a rabbit, but I want people to get the point. As we're sitting there talking, the barista goes, "Oh, I really like this song that's playing." Well, it was a modern redo of an old 70s song by Stevie Wonder. And so this girl could not have been over 20. So I just jokingly said, "Hey, so do you know who sings the song?" And she's like, "Yeah, I think it's so and so." And I was like, "Ooh, pretty good. But do you know who did the original?" And she was like, "Oh, I have no idea." But she was real personable, laughing, engaged. And so, again, I didn't physically go to recruit, but
Right.
just in getting coffee, what did I incidentally run onto? Now, that's what we always mean by lifestyle recruiting.
Right.
So let's continue. That's a perfect example of I actually started the interview process while buying my cup of coffee. She was engaging.
Right.
She carried on conversation.
Right.
I watched her actually interact with her other team member, and they were laughing and they were enjoyable. They had a good energy. I've actually created an opportunity to begin the interview process without actually having to have an interview process.
Right.
And so when we start pulling back the curtain to the humanity, like we always like to say, and by the way, I'm really happy that you've even adopted that word because I'm really big on people using that word more often. When we can pull back the curtain to our humanity, opportunities are all around us. And I don't remember the traditional way of recruiting versus Mitch Gray's kind of way. We both want to arrive at the same scenario. I think what the path I'm teaching does is helps people become more proactive so that they can actually screen those opportunities long before they ever have to deal with an actual interview. I already know Amy at this coffee shop is engaging, personable, and takes initiative. Okay, good. What else do I know? Do I need to know about her? So let's play that a little bit more, and then I know you have another question.
Okay. Because
Let,
you know
let's
I do.
say let's say I invited Amy. Let's say I took that further and I asked my favorite question, and that was, "Hey, Amy, you did a great job today. Do you know anyone looking for an opportunity, or maybe are you looking for?" And she says, "Yes." I said, "Oh, great. Could we meet next Tuesday at 10 a.m.? Would that work for you? Could you come to my place of business and we'll just have it?" "Oh, yeah, sure. I'll show up at 10 next Tuesday." Okay. I've already done like 15, 20% of the interview because I've seen her in action. I've engaged with her. I know what kind of person I'm going to be talking to on Tuesday at 10.
Hmm.
Now, when she comes in, I might find out more about her experience, her passions, her hobbies, her desires, what she's really looking to do. She's young. So, is she in college? Is she wanting to go to college? Is she looking for a career? I already know these questions I'm going to ask. And guess what? I don't have them typed out. Like, they're just basic come and, give and take within my own human curiosity because I know what I need on my team. And so, what I'm proposing to people is if they would entertain the idea, by the way, all of this is replicable on social media as well for remote workers. So if I'm actually taking advantage of lifestyle recruiting, I've done so much of the homework before I even enter that conversation. In fact, what I've really done is all this algorithmic screening that we're depending on that is probably having us miss more opportunities than make. I'm actually getting to make that decision myself or someone I trust, maybe my best customers, maybe my best employees. I can trust them to also have that judgment as well, because I've kind of taught them those behaviors. And so your question was, do we interview? Yes, we interview, but we don't wait till the arrival of the interview. We actually become super proactive on the interview process as we're just simply living life. Last week, I was at the grocery store. I was looking for something specific. Person came up to me, took initiative. Hey, can I help you find something? Bingo, my ears go up. Yes, you can. And so maybe, just maybe, that's another opportunity. These happen to me all the time, Keith. And that's what I always tell leaders. You're missing hundreds of opportunities a day just by waking up and going outside your house. You're missing so many opportunities that are just arriving.
Well, maybe they're not. And hear me out for just a second. Because we are so now either codependent or dependent on
Mm-hmm.
other things, including technology, to do what we may have been doing ourselves years ago, years and years ago, um, they may not be missing those opportunities because they're not living it. Okay.
It's very true. It's
And
very
I say
true.
that because I know you now. And so I know
Yeah.
the person that you are, not just about the person that you are. I know that you are uh, very spiritual and you understand the spirituality of connectedness. And I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
go too deep in that, but you live in a space, Mitch Gray, you live in a space where you make things happen. It's part of you, who you are. It's your aura. It's whatever you want to call it. It's Mitch
Yeah.
Gray, and so he's going to make things happen. Whereas if somebody else, if we talk generically HR or whatever that process and that person is, they're not living that. They are typing some words into a box.
Right.
That box
Right.
is going into whatever job search engines out there, and that's that's it. And they're waiting. So they're not engaging, they're not doing all those human things that you literally do. Okay,
You
so they
just
may
you just said it, and I want to point this
what?
out real
No, well, wait
quick.
a second. So all I'm saying is that they may not be missing the opportunities because they're not engaged in that space, is all I'm trying to say.
And that's what you just said. You just identified the problem with one word. You used the word, you said they're waiting. And you are spot on. They're sitting and waiting. And it's so crazy that you mentioned that word, because just this morning I had checked in on a client who's still building their team, and I just sent them a text. They were supposed to have some interviews on Monday. By the way,
This
using
past
our, yes, this is current,
Okay.
using our strategy. By the way,
Okay.
um, so I got a text message last Friday from said client,
All right.
and we had a leadership meeting last Thursday. So all this is within a week. Okay,
All right.
so last Thursday we had a leadership meeting. Um, there were some frustrations shared, still trying to build a team, kind of going through some growing pains. And so I gave them a quick strategy. And the quick strategy was, because they need to hire some people pretty quickly. The quick strategy was, go back and ask your best customers
Mm-hmm.
and your best team members if they know anybody looking for an opportunity. That's one of the best, quickest ways to find great people. So they did. And they set up, within a day, they set up 3 interviews for this past Monday. So I'm like, great, good job. And so I sent a text message out this morning. Hey, how did the interviews go on Monday? And they said none of them showed up. There were no shows for the interviews. That's okay. It happens. It's life.
Yeah.
But it got me to thinking. I remember, Keith. I remember in the late '90s, early 2000s. I was probably doing an average of 10 interviews a day, 4 to 5 days a week, because we had an unwritten rule in that company that we interviewed everyone who filled out an application.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that many applications. That was back in the day where you had to go into a store, ask for, the internet barely even existed back
Right.
then. And so yeah, we had an unwritten rule that we owed people the respect of, if you come in and fill out an application, we're going to give you at least a 3-minute interview. So I averaged for about 4 or 5 years, probably about 10 a day for 4 or 5. So I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews I've done, probably thousands. What's crazy is I rarely, if ever, had anyone no call for an interview. Out of the thousands of interviews I did, rarely would people not show up for an interview. One of the number one complaints I'm seeing on social media, on LinkedIn, and with clients is people not showing up for an interview. And so this morning, that got my wheels turning. Okay, I'm like, okay, so what was different 20, 25 years ago where people always showed up versus now where they don't? And I found one common element. I want to see if you can guess it. I'm going to put you on the spot. What's the common element?
I'm the
What's
question guy. Um, well, now you've stumped me. I don't
what's
know.
what's the
So,
one thing that's different from 20, 25 years ago to now? And the reason I'm bringing this up is you identified it in your
well, you
spiel.
just identified it. If we're talking technology, we're codependent
Yes.
or dependent on,
So it's
whether
the
it's this
it's
phone, it's the computer, it's a tablet,
right.
it doesn't matter.
I'm going to say it's the human element. There is a major difference when I look you in the eye and commit to something versus when I respond to an email
Mm,
and commit to something. Science and psychologists have done study after study. The difference in brain activity when I'm sitting across the table
tremendous.
from
Yeah.
you and I commit to something versus when I respond to an email or a text and commit to something, the difference in brain. In fact, I would even argue, and I don't know if there's research out there or not that shows it. I wish there was, if there isn't.
And there may be.
I would even argue that the memory play when you respond to a text or an email is much lower than when you sit across the table and look someone in the eye, flesh to flesh. It's just like writing something down. It sparks neurons in your brain that give that capacity of memory that doesn't happen electronically. Science has proven it time and time again. What's my point? How does this relate to what you said? You said that one of the
Your
issues is,
client then, because it's sparked from your client.
yes, well, because you said part of the issue is they're not seeing these opportunities that I see all the time because they're waiting and they're dependent on the technology.
Hmm.
And my response to that would be, we are the creators of our own universe. Anyone can do what Mitch Gray does. Anyone. I 100% believe that without any doubt in my mind. It's simply a learned behavior and a learned awareness. And it begins with the willingness to say, sure, I could type my job description in the little box and I can hit send, and that's okay, do that. But what you can also do is take 30 minutes a week, or when you're out grocery shopping, or when you're shopping for a car, or when you're buying coffee, all these little behaviors that 90% of Americans do every single day is look for opportunity. It's just simply a learned behavior. It's not hard. It's just raising the awareness. And so my response would be, yes, continue typing it in the box and using that and hitting send. I said it's a tool in the toolbox. But what you can also do is you could actually go to the tool store and shop for some literal tools. And while you're shopping, pay attention. And then, going back again to my client, who those were no shows. But here's the other kicker in that. She went back and asked her favorite customers and employees if they knew someone. So who set up the interview?
Through customers and employees.
The referral.
Yeah.
It's different, and I can almost guarantee you that was the scenario that happened. And that's okay because it's a learning experience. I'm not knocking them for doing this. Really, what needs to happen in that
Oh, so wait a
scenario
second.
is
When the customers employees set up the actual time and date,
my guess
it
is
never
that
came back to
my guess is
client.
they just sent them in. That's my guess. It's a
Oh,
small business, a team of 15, a small team.
right.
My guess is, I don't know this for sure, but my hunch, which is usually spot on, is that, hey, Keith, do you know anyone? Yes, I do. I'll send them in. That doesn't work.
Right.
What works is, hey, Keith, do you know anyone? Can you ask if it's okay if you give me their number and I, as the leader, make the phone call?
Right.
I want to put myself in front of as many people as humanly possible. That's my one goal as a great leader. If I do that, I will build a great team. And by the way, for those listening and going, Mitch, I don't have time for this. I don't, blah, 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 excuse after excuse after excuse. Look, I get it. But what you do have time for is for your business to grow. And the best way for your business to grow is to have the right people on your team. And the shortest path to having the right people on your team is to get out of the chair from behind the computer and go put flesh and blood on your business
Mm.
by meeting people. Another thing people can do real quick, man, I'm giving away all the tricks right now.
Well,
Another
and I
simple,
also
easy thing,
want to get to
just
one more place before we go ahead.
real quick, I want to give one because it's on my mind again from something that happened this week. I won't tell a story. Real quick, another way you can go put flesh on blood on your business is go to your Chamber of Commerce meetings and simply ask everyone in the room, do you know people looking for a great place to work? Just ask the question. Go ahead. What's your question? I'm giving away all the good stuff, which I should. Go
Well,
ahead.
you
What's your question?
shouldn't. You shouldn't be giving away all the good stuff.
I want to. I'm here to give away all the good stuff.
All
That's what
right.
I do.
Well. Now I want to give away some stuff too, because like I said, I'm jumping into coaching and consultancy, and I want to help those who are now in the position of finding jobs. And so I want to flip the coin on you.
Let's go.
How do you help people looking for the job to do it the right way? To do it, is there a Mitch Gray way? Because if
Oh,
not,
100% there is. And I have
because
proof to it.
there's a Dr. K way as well. And so
I have
we
proof
have to
to it.
have that. We have to have those continual conversations because
Yes.
it's all about that conversation. And so, what's the
Can I
Mitch?
give away some of it real quick? Real quick, I'm going to give away some of it. So if you're searching for an opportunity, if you're searching for, I'm going to tell you a really quick story that'll give you the proof. So last December, my son graduated with his master's degree, and my son played college football. So the reason I'm saying that is when you're a collegiate athlete, you have one job, be an athlete. And then your second job, you have to earn your scholarship, right? And then your second job is to actually succeed at school. Like that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
And he played at a major Division I college. So it's not like he was at little podunk, 2 year school where he was at a major college. And so he gets to the end of his college career and he hasn't had time to go do internships. He hasn't had time to go look for a job. His job has been to run the football and
Yeah.
tackle people. And so he's like, Dad, he called me one day. I'll never forget. He's like, Dad, I'm about to graduate and I don't have a job. And so it just all at once it hit him. And he's like, I've got this master's degree, but what do I do? And so he really wanted to go into commercial real estate. Fortunately, the one other advantage you have as a college athlete, especially if you have some success, is normally you're in a larger city or even a metro area. He's in what I would call a larger city, 500,000 people. So the great thing is every weekend, there were 25, 30,000 people watching your football game. So they know who you are. And if you've done well for yourself and received any awards, which he did, then you have a reputation that you don't have to earn your way to building a reputation. You still have to earn your way, but you can kind of walk in the door and already have some clout, right? So fortunately for him, he had that on his side. And he had 4 or 5 major commercial realty companies kind of fighting to hire him because they
Really?
knew who he was and how hard he worked and the things he had done. And so he's beginning the interview process, right? He's getting recruited, kind of the way that I like to see recruitment. He's big, and he's like, okay, Dad, so I'm going to an interview, but I don't know how I should follow up. Do I send him an email? Do I send him like, what do I do? He's 22 years old at the time.
Right.
I'm like, son, here's what you do. You get done with an interview. First of all, you show up 5 minutes early. You offer to buy the coffee. You get done with the interview. And within 5 hours, you send them a thank you email. The next day, you write them a thank you note. Go to the dollar store, buy a pack of thank you notes, mail it out the next day. That way, they get it within 5 days through the Postal Service. 3 days later, you give them a phone call and you say thank you. When you get ready to follow up again the next week, you show up face to face, person to person. And he's like, really, Dad? I said, if you do that, it'll work. I promise. So he goes through that process, and about 3 weeks go by, and he gets 3 job offers, right? They all wanted him. And he gets called into all 3 companies to, kind of let them give his offer. And every single person said, one guy said, it's been 30 years since I received a handwritten thank you note. The other 2 people said, we have never received a thank you note from someone who we gave an interview to. My youngest daughter, same scenario, but with college classes. She was trying to get a certain professor she wanted. She said, Dad, how do I make sure I get that class? I said, you write a handwritten thank you note to the college professor. and then you show up in their office, person to person, no emails, forget technology, you put flesh and blood on who you are. That professor who she got the class came in the first day of class and said, I want to show everyone an example. This is the first handwritten thank you note I've received in 25 years. And I hand selected this student to be in my class because of that. So the answer is, Mitch,
People
how do
still
I
want to
get
be
it?
people.
How do I get a
Oh,
job in today's market? You know how you differentiate yourself in today's market? You show up flesh and blood. If it's a remote job, you get on the phone and you make a phone call. You don't text, you don't email. Let them hear a voice to it. If you can get on Zoom, get on Zoom. But if I'm looking for something right now and it's local to me and it's not remote, I'm showing up flesh and blood. But Mitch, they're going to have me fill out the application online. Good. Fill it out. The next day, show up. Bring donuts, buy coffee, do what you need to do to put flesh and blood on everything. Write a handwritten thank you note. Because again, what did we say a while ago? It's much more difficult, and it's more difficult now than ever in the modern world. It's more difficult for someone to reject your face than it is your email, because no one is showing up in person. And if it were me and I was really desperate for a job, I might even try and conjure up a $500 plane ticket and show up in Philadelphia for the interview. Because you talk about setting yourself apart from everyone else on that job board. No one's doing that. I would show up with donuts, coffee, and I would meet the CEO, Sarah, and say, Sarah, it's wonderful to meet you. I just wanted to put skin on Mitch Gray. Here I am. Do I have the job? No
love
one
it.
can reject the human face. And so I had someone tell me about a year ago when my book first came out, How to Hire and Keep Great People. She said, Mitch, all of your tactics are old school. And I said, yes, but no one else is doing them. And my kids are living proof of that. They were living proof a year ago, my son was, when 3 major realtors said, I've never seen this. It's been 3 decades since I've seen this. By the way, because of those opportunities, because he differentiated himself, he is now a part of the national a national organization for young minority realtors. My kids are half black and then I'm white, so they're minorities. He has actually become mentored by one of the top minority commercial real estate people in the country. And I asked him, I said, did you ask these people why? You know what other tactic he used? I said, Dad, I said, son, did you ask these people why you got chosen? He goes, I know why I got chosen, Dad. And I said, why is that? He goes, because my first day on the job, I got on the phone and I called these people. So his first day on the job, he said, I used the tactics you taught me and I write handwritten notes all the time. And he said, all these older people around me are wondering, how are you doing this? And he said, it's because of what my dad taught me to do. It's old school, but it works because you said it. People just want to be human. And when you can touch those heartstrings, when you can reach the emotion, I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about those engaging opportunities. I could tell you another story about my oldest daughter,
Can
same
we
way,
save it
6
for
months.
next time?
I would love to, but I have those stories over and over again. And what I'm telling people is your question was for someone looking for a job right now.
Yeah.
You are going to separate yourself by doing what everyone else is not willing to do. And they're not willing to show up in person. They're not willing to write hand thank you notes. And they're not willing to get on the phone old school style and make calls. And that will get you promoted. It will land you the best jobs and it'll make people see you differently than everyone else you're in competition with. That's the way you land a job today. I promise.
Well, Mitch Gray, this is always, as always, it's inspiring. It's all inspiring. It's just a wonderful having a conversation with you all the time. It never gets old, and it's always something new, and it's always something powerful. And we got to go just because of time. Otherwise, this would be a too long podcast. But
Every time.
but we always have a next time. So with that, I want to say thank you to my audience, and of course, thank you to Mitch Gray. Uh, Again, we're in season 2 of the Question God podcast, and we'll see you next time. Take care.